We will continue our topic of applications with quadratic equations. This is part 2, and this time we're going to be looking at geometry problems and problems that involve the Pythagorean theorem. So for the Pythagorean theorem, we would like to make sure we are recognizing we're looking at right triangles, and this is right triangle ABC with our two legs as A and B and the hypotenuse as C. And so the Pythagorean theorem is given as A squared plus B squared equals C squared, where again A and B are the legs and C is the hypotenuse. And a hypotenuse has two pieces to its definition. It's the side opposite, the right angle, and because the right angle is the largest angle, C is also the longest side. And that can be very helpful when you're double checking to make sure that you have found the correct side. So we've looked at our steps for solving our quadratic equations that are going to be involving our Pythagorean theorems from type 1 problems. So we're going to be figuring out what we're trying to find, defining our variable, setting up our equations, figuring out how to solve it, making sure it makes sense, figuring out if we have to reject anything, and then making sure that you're actually answering the question. So for our first example, we are given the fact that the longer leg of a right triangle is 7 centimeters longer than the length of the shorter leg. So we do not know what the shorter leg is. So we're going to actually call the shorter leg x. So we're going to define our variables by actually labeling our right triangle. So we're told it's a right triangle, which is imperative, otherwise you can't use the Pythagorean theorem. So our shorter leg is unknown, so we can call it x. You can call it anything you want. And then we know the longer leg is 7 centimeters longer than the shorter leg. And so that would give us x plus 7, wouldn't it? And then the hypotenuse is given as 17 centimeters. And we are asked to find the length of the two legs of the triangle. So we're going to utilize the Pythagorean theorem. So the Pythagorean theorem, we have a leg squared plus the other leg, notice the parentheses, squared, equals the hypotenuse squared. Now x squared right now just has to remain as x squared, but x plus 7 quantity squared means x plus 7 times x plus 7. And then 17 squared means 17 times 17, which is actually 289. So now we're going to distribute our x plus 7 times x plus 7, which gives us x squared. And then notice we have plus 7x for the outside distribution and plus 7x for the inside distribution, which gives us a total of plus 14x. And then our last distribution is 7 times 7, which is 49. And now we're going to combine our like terms. So we have x squared plus x squared, which is 2x squared. 14x has nothing to combine with it, but because this is quadratic, we're going to set it equal to 0, which means we're going to subtract 289, which gives us minus 240, and this is set equal to 0. Now the next step is crucial. You do want to take time and notice that 2x squared plus 14x minus 240, everything is even. so we can factor out a 2. And by factoring out a 2, this leaves us with x squared plus 7x minus 60 equals 0. And if we look at this 2, we could either divide by 2 or simply notice that it is impossible for 2 to equal 0. Therefore, x squared plus 7x minus 60 has to equal 0. And this is factorable. I want you to take some time. Oops, I made a mistake here. Sorry about that. That's actually 120, isn't it? There we go. Okay. So 120 has a lot of factors. And notice that it is minus 120, but it is plus 7x. So if we start thinking about all of the factors of 120, we don't want them to add to be 7. We want them to have a difference of 7 because we have minus 120. One of them is going to have to be positive. One of them is going to have to be negative. Now, if I start very far away, 1 and 120, this has a difference of 119. That's way too far apart. So I'm going to get closer. Anything that ends in a 5 or a 0 has to have a multiple of 5. So 120 divided by 5 is 24. And we're getting a lot closer. That actually has a difference of 19. So we're getting very close to our 7. If we look at 6, 120 divided by 6 is 20. That has a difference of 14. We're getting closer. 120 is not divisible by 7. But it is divisible by 8, and 120 divided by 8 is 15, and that's the winner, because notice that has a difference of 7. So we want this to be positive 7, so the larger one has to be the positive one. So this is x plus 15 times x minus 8, and this is set equal to 0. Setting each factor equal to 0, x plus 15 equals 0 means x is equal to negative 15. But this is a triangle, and lengths are not negative, so we're going to reject this. Or x minus 8 equals 0, which means x is equal to 8. And remember, x is our width, or our height, or it's our shorter leg. And then our longer leg was given as 7 centimeters longer. And so that is a total of 15. So the legs, the answer to this, the legs are 8 centimeters and 15 centimeters. Question 1. The shorter leg of a right triangle is 20 centimeters less than the hypotenuse. And the longer leg is given as 40 centimeters. So I'm going to help you get this set up, and then you are going to find the length of the shorter leg and the hypotenuse. So you are told that the longer leg of this right triangle is 40 centimeters. You are told that the shorter leg of a right triangle is 20 centimeters less than the hypotenuse. We don't know the hypotenuse, so we can call that x. So the shorter leg will be x minus 20. So you're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for the shorter leg and the hypotenuse. This is an open-ended question, so make sure that if you have questions, you contact me. Example number 2. We're going to make sure we draw a diagram for this so that we understand what's going on here. So a window is in the shape of a rectangle with an adjacent right triangle above it. So we have a window that is in the shape of a rectangle with an adjacent, which means right next to it, right triangle above. So that's the shape of this window. Okay, so the information we're given about this is the length of one leg of the right triangle is 2 feet less than the length of the hypotenuse. Now I'm going to keep reading. The length of the other leg is 1 foot less than the length of the hypotenuse. Notice both of the legs are being described in terms of the hypotenuse. So we don't know what the hypotenuse is, so we're going to call it x. Going back, the length of one leg is 2 feet less than the length of the hypotenuse, so that means it is x minus 2. And the length of the other leg is 1 foot less than the length of the hypotenuse, so that is x minus 1. And this is a right triangle, so we can use the Pythagorean theorem, where we have a leg squared plus the other leg squared is equal to the hypotenuse squared. Now x minus 1 squared means x minus 1 times x minus 1, plus we have x minus 2 times x minus 2 to represent our x minus 2 quantity squared, and this is still equal to x squared. Now make sure you distribute properly. So this is x squared minus 1x is minus 2x, and then we have plus 1. Again, distribute properly. X squared minus 2x is minus 4x, and then we have plus 4. Now, this is quadratic, so we're going to set it equal to 0. And notice, if we subtract x squared, that's actually going to cancel one of our x squareds, isn't it? But we still have this x squared. So this gives us x squared. Now we have minus 2x and minus 4x, which gives us minus 6x. And then we have plus 1 with plus 4, which gives us plus 5. And this actually gives us a very nice simple factoring problem, because this is x squared minus 6x but plus 5. This is going to give us x minus, and factors of 5 that add to be 6 are 5 and 1. So then setting each factor equal to 0, x minus 5 equals 0, which means x equals 5. Which means that if the hypotenuse is 5, then one leg is 4, and the other leg is 3. Or x minus 1 equals 0, which means x equals 1. And now if we continue with the hypotenuse being 1, x minus 1 would give us 0, and x minus 2 would give us -1. So this means we need to reject this solution. And so the lengths of all 3 sides of our triangle are 3 feet by 4 feet with a hypotenuse of 5 feet. And for your next question, this is multiple choice. So a sail on a sailboat is in the shape of 2 adjacent right triangles. The hypotenuse of the lower triangle is 10 feet, so that's right there. So we know that that is 10 feet. One leg is 2 feet shorter than the other leg, so that is x minus 2 and x. And you are asked to find the lengths of the legs of the lower triangle.